Welcome to this forum for candidates to Ward 2 of the Corvallis City Council race. This online program is co-hosted by the Lynn Benton branch of the NAACP and the League of Women Voters of Corvallis. My name is Nina Petrovich, and I'm a member of the Political Action Committee of the NAACP. The Lynn Benton branch of the NAACP was formed in 1971 and is a nonpartisan organization that works to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality and rights of all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. I'm joined by Jessica McDonald as our co-moderator for this session. Jessica, please share a few words about the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, Nina. My name is Jessica McDonald, and I serve as the Voter Education Chair on the League of Women Voters of Corvallis Voter Education Committee. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan advocacy and education organization. We work to defend our democracy, as well as to engage our community in the issues that matter most to them. I encourage everybody listening to this forum to seek out opportunities to learn more about both of these organizations, to get involved, to become a member, and listen in. Welcome to Bria Lewis and Dylan DeHonor to this candidate forum for Ward 2. To open this discussion, we are going to ask each of you to take 2 minutes to talk to those listening about why you are running for City Council. We will begin with Bria and then move to Dylan. Bria, your 2 minutes begin now.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to do this. My name is Brea Lewis. I am the current incumbent counselor for Ward 2 for Corvallis, which covers all of downtown and some of OSU. I've been a Corvallis resident since 2019. And I started running for council because I had a deep passion for this city. I love it. It gave me a second lease on life. I was not in a great place. I moved all the way from the East Coast and I wasn't in a great place. And I decided to move to Corvallis. And I haven't looked back ever since. And I wanted to give back to this amazing city who gave me a second chance.
Thank you, Bria. And your introductory remarks, Dylan.
Oh, okay. Oh, starting now. Hello, my name is Dylan DeHonor. I'm running for Corvallis City Council for Ward 2. I'm a first-generation Filipino-American born in Southern California. I moved to Corvallis in January of 2021 because the onset of the COVID pandemic and ensuing lockdown closed my college, lost my job, along with the sudden death of my father and the ever-rising cost of living in California. It made me one of millions of Americans who moved for better opportunities elsewhere. I'm running because I'm deeply troubled by the fact that about 19% of children and about 26.4% of all people in Corvallis live below the poverty line, and about 37.1% of renting households spend more than 50% of their monthly income on rent. We are in a crisis, and this cannot be understated nor ignored. Our neighbors experiencing homelessness are also forcibly displaced by the inhumane practice of sweeps, everything they didn't have on their person thrown into dumpsters. Hundreds have died from lack of food, water, and shelter and medicine in Oregon. Many have moved or are planning on moving from Corvallis due to the lack of affordable housing and desirable jobs. Businesses have to contend with the increasing cost of doing business and the presence of homelessness around their buildings. And our natural resources are subject to degradation and exploitation. And there is a general sort of lack of trust in local governments, as I encountered while canvassing and gathering signatures for my petition to even be on the ballot. Things just can't continue as they are. We need a council that truly represents us and acts in our best interests. These issues are not at all abstract to me. I have had to move about 3 times and have been in very unstable places and just plain bad living situations. If I wasn't lucky enough to have friends that were in a place to help me, I'd be one of those people out living on the streets myself. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, candidates. And now I'll pass the questions over to Nina.
Thank you for the introductions, candidates. We'll now turn towards a list of questions that each of you will respond to, and all the candidates for City Council in all districts. These questions have been provided to the candidates in advance, and we will set a limit for 2 minutes for each response. For our first question, we'll start with Dylan and then move to Bria. Oh, I beg your pardon, Bria. So the first question is, what do you see as the biggest issues facing the city in the next 5 years? How do you propose to tackle those issues? Dylan, will you please answer first?
Well, the biggest issues that we'll be facing in the next 5 years are the issues that we already are facing. We are in the midst of a housing crisis. Ours is the most rent-burdened city in all of Oregon. The poverty rate is staggering. I'm be a broken record. 1 in 5 children living under the poverty line, 1 in 4 for the general population, and 4 out of 10 renting households spending more than half their income on rent. We have overcrowded and dilapidated rentals, people moving away for lack of affordable housing and good jobs. People are living out of cars, hotels, and tents. And climate change is here, and we must ensure we're prepared for more frequent and intense freak weather events, heat waves and wildfires, cold snaps and freezes, and irregular rain patterns. Our city's facilities are inadequate and dated. I hear tell of the current Parks and Recs building at every park sinking and being at risk of flooding. Just last week, I was told by the head of the IT department that the servers beneath the library have to be protected by sandbags when great storms rain down on our town. And that's just our city's facilities. Many people's homes are not prepared for these natural disasters. Not everyone has access to adequate heat insulation, air conditioning, backup generators, air filters, or has the money and resources to sustain themselves where their shelter or employment was compromised. Speaking to a representative, another issue, speaking to a representative of the Corvallis Police Department confirms my fears that fentanyl is here in our town, but I see it more as a symptom of a sick society rather than a series of isolated tragedies. Poverty is the root of many of our city, or rather the country's ills, and feeds into and exacerbates current crises. The economic prosperity which our nation knew when union membership was high and labor protections were many is gone. And one of the consequences of which is we're seeing more people turn to addiction to coke, alcohol, tobacco, opiates. And sorry, I recognize that I don't have time to speak on how I believe we should tackle these issues, but to know that I see them and will delve deeper into these matters elsewhere in the near future publicly. I know that there is a forum happening on Wednesday at the library. That's all I have to say on the matter.
Thank you very much. Bria, excuse me. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I heard the question. Definitely, we are definitely in a housing crisis. It's definitely a national issue. As a renter myself, it is definitely a problem. I Most of my paycheck does go to my rent, and I have little left for anything else. We are, I know currently on the council, I am the council liaison for not only the Hope Board, which is the housing opportunity planning and equity board, but also the liaison for the Sustainability Coalition. Both are doing amazing work. The Sustainability Coalition already has plans and projects recurrent to fight climate change. They are working on different programs and different ways to encourage the city, the city itself, and also like local businesses to compost. We actually had a meeting. We actually had a presentation from our Climate Action Advisory Board back in June about different options to encourage businesses to continue those or like implement those if they haven't already. We're working with a lot of developers like OB Industries to be able to build up with affordable housing and continuing to work with developers to make housing possible. We do have a lot of shelters that are available when the climate gets rough. We do, unfortunately, not everybody wants to be helped. That's just a sad reality because there is a lot going on, and sometimes some people don't want to be helped, maybe because they don't understand that they need help. Other times it's because they've been hurt too many times. I know I've experienced that myself. I have been homeless before, and when my brother and I lost our home, we had the option of going to a shelter. The only problem is, there's not a lot of shelters that accept both men and women. I know it's for safety reasons. And, I was like, when's the next time I was going to see my brother if that was the case? So we didn't want that to happen, especially after we lost our mom in 2008. So it was a lot going on. But I know Corvallis is doing its best, and I want to continue doing that hard work alongside everybody else.
Thank you very much. Jessica?
Yes, so on to the next question. We will start with Bria and then go to Dylan for the responses. How will you work to ensure that meaningful engagement and input from the public is represented in your deliberations and decisions as a city councilor? And Bria, we'll start with you.
Sure. So there is a lot of opportunities to engage with the city council, though sometimes I know it can be difficult since most of the council do actually have day jobs outside of being on city council. And on top of that, we do have, like I said, our city liaison appointments. I currently have 4 city liaison appointments. So on top of the city council, I do have to do those meetings, as well as work my day job. So it can be very hard and understandable that feels like, you can't reach your local officials. However, I do my absolute best to answer every email I can possibly do and answer every call that I do receive. And I know that, and I can say that that's many for staff and other counselors. I would like to expand our outreach a little better. I know there have been some times where there has been outreach done. And then when I would go out to like farmers market, or I would go to like the local businesses, and they'll ask and they'll say, well, we didn't get a notification. It wasn't posted anywhere. So I want to actually expand to see if we can expand our outreach efforts more than just posting it on the city website.
Thank you, Bria. And now to you, Dylan.
Let's see. I work to ensure meaningful. Well, if you couldn't already tell by how much I've spoken, I love talking. Even more than I love talking, though, I love listening and learning. A grievance I encountered throughout my campaign is that people do not feel reached out to, listened to. A few streets down from me is a woman, a longtime homeowner and member of the Central Park Neighborhood Association. She told me that she and other locals had opposed the development of the new graduate student housing building on Monroe as it is, and that their concerns were not considered in the city's okay to the university. And yesterday, I talked to another woman who had been living in the same house since the 80s that feels as though she had not been reached out to. There is a gap. Um, there is a gap of communication. Not everybody is tech savvy. Older people, um, you know, you can't exactly reach out to them on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. You kind of have to send out a physical letter or a phone call or I don't know, a fax. Um, yeah, but yeah, I agree with Brea. Like to this end, I'd like to see staff, like maybe a dedicated city social media team that can meet people where they're at, or well, maybe going door to door is more of a fanciful thing than actually feasible. But um, yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. And back to you, Nina, for the next question.
Okay. The city has a large urban growth boundary. What are your plans to service this land for the future, including infrastructure like sewer, water, and transportation? Do you support a new memoranda of understanding with the county in relation to the use and development within this UGB, the urban growth boundary? Dylan, would you begin with your response, please?
Um, well, much of the Sun Belt in the United States stands as a monument on how not to expand, and the consequences of expansive low-density development is clear. Increased utility costs, increased road maintenance costs, especially social isolation, a greater impact on the environment, pollution, a lack of ready access to nearby services and amenities. When I used to live in Ward 8 in Northwest Corvallis, over by Walnut Boulevard, I lived in what was called a food desert. Yeah, the nearest restaurant or corner store or grocery store was a ways. It would be impossible for me to practically walk to and from there. And I appreciate the bus, but let's see. Sorry, I'm losing track. Another consequence of expansive low density development, lack of ready access to nearby services and amenities, and not to mention the inaccessibility. Like, unless you are someone that has a car or is physically able to drive, um, you don't really have access to services and amenities. And we can't allow that to happen here. I'd like to see to it that we have regulations in place that we build up rather than out. Oh, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. And Bria, would you answer the question as well?
Yes, so we do have the urban growth boundary. We do have master plans in order to, figure out how to expand there if and when is necessary. Currently it's not necessary because it is quite large. And that's going to take a long time before that even fills. But there are master plans and how the development to support the developments and how those are going to plan out. We do. And due to the fact that there are a lot of natural features like wetlands and very protected natural areas and hills, it's not impossible, but it's definitely difficult to be able to expand that way. However, we do have a primary source, which is our SDCs, which is our system development charges, which are solely for those purposes. And so that's the plan. Those are mainly the plans that we have in order to use the urban growth boundary when it's necessary. Currently, it's not really necessary to actually go through that way, but it's definitely there for us to use when, the housing gets a lot more denser than it is. And Corvallis is growing a lot faster than we are developing, which is unfortunate. But that is the cost of being a university town.
Thank you.
Great, on to the next question. We'll begin with Bria and then go to Dylan. Are there specific actions you would take if elected or re-elected to advance racial equity within our community? If so, what are those actions? And we'll start with you, Bria.
Sure. So I do I when I first got elected, I got elected as the first openly gay woman and a first Black woman on the city council. And ever since, I have been going to a lot of NAACP events. I decided I wanted to be on the JEDI board, which is the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Board. Before that, during COVID, before I even decided to be on council, I applied for the Martin Luther King Advisory Board. I got involved with the Black Lives Matter with a friend of mine, and we started a mini movement called Speak Justice and Peace. So there's a lot that we need to do, not only to raise minority voices, but also to raise more like LGBTQ voices because we don't have a lot of that going on in our community, and we need more events and and more outlets for that to happen, as well as those of children of immigrants and as well because my mother was from West Africa, so she had a lot of struggles and she didn't get her green card till my brother and what until I was about like 4. So it's, there's a lot of struggles with that as well. My father was adopted and so he had to go through the foster system and you don't hear a lot of voices about that either. Um, Luckily, he was adopted by a great woman who I love and today call my grandmother. So there's a lot of work to be done. So with the war with Ukraine, with what's happening in Gaza, we need to hear more about those voices and, be able to, support our sister city in Ukraine as well as what's going on overseas. And like that's now starting to leak into our local community. So being on those boards and being, part of the solution is definitely something that I am looking forward to doing.
Thank you, Bria. Now, Dylan, the same question on advancing racial equity.
Well, there is sort of a pervasive narrative that Corvallis as a shining progressive city, um, that this is not a non-issue, but racism is unfortunately alive and well. For a city that calls itself a community that embraces diversity, I see clearly through its policies and conduct that it is quite the opposite in many regards. Colored people are overrepresented in our homeless population and are generally poorer, something we see across Oregon and the country in general. I've been followed by police. I've been regarded with suspicion by my neighbors. I've received racially charged comments and questions from white people. And during the COVID lockdown and months thereafter, I feared that the hateful rhetoric against the Chinese and Asians in general, which had resulted in hate crimes across the country, would come to me. Um, I don't know, for a city that prides itself on having a park named after the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., only to step on his ideals and betray his aspirations, it's really disheartening. The other members of the slate and I had a long talk with a prominent Indigenous community leader regarding the problems Native Americans face at the city and state level, as well as the longstanding failures in addressing them. Some of the topics we discussed were the overrepresentation of Native people among the homeless, high rates of poverty, the lack of meaningful acknowledgement of the presence of Indigenous peoples and their removal, which preceded the establishment of Corvallis, performative activism, continued desecration of regional Indigenous peoples' homelands through industrial extraction and pollution, reparations, and material aid to Native peoples and tribal nations. Like, as a Filipino American, the issues of colonialism, imperialism, slavery, war, civil strife, environmental degradation, displacement, and resistance are not abstract to me. They are interwoven into my people's history, my family's history, my history. I'm not interested in land acknowledgements without action. I'm not interested in glowing words about diversity and inclusivity when current policy stifles it. We cannot move into the future without righting the wrongs of the past and present. Um, the race issue in Corvallis is a class issue, is a housing issue. And well, that's all I have to say on the matter. I'm probably near the end of my time.
Thank you, candidates, for those responses. Back to you, Nina.
Yeah, I appreciate your candor for both of you and sharing your experiences. The council events have called attention to the relationship between the council and the city manager and staff leadership. Is the relationship between the council and the city staff and management in need of change? Dylan, I'll ask you to address the question first.
This is the one question that I had some trouble thinking about. I am aware of several employees who have left the city, their city jobs, because of some questionable workplace practices regarding how one would go about issuing reprimands or to whom one is to report to. But I I do not believe right now I can confidently speak on things like the Councilor Ellis situation. But I do believe that the policy of making it so that city councilors can't really speak to staff directly for the sake of clearing channels. And I know that we have our roles, we have our jobs, but I I would like to see to it that the council is more able to speak to staff without the fear of jeopardizing either's position. But that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Bria, would you address that question, please?
Sure. So with every change in term, there's always a change and shift of how the council and leadership interact. I do believe it's probably due to the fact that council changes every 2 years. So that does cause a lot of strain between staff as well as city council, because it's like staff will do all of this work for one term and then a new council comes in and they have to like restart all over again. So that's very frustrating. And I think that constant change that does need to be looked at in order for that to lessen. That's probably why people are just like, wait, who do we talk to? Who do we go to? I know in my term I literally we went from one city recorder to another. Um, I don't know why, but there has been a lot of staff changes, and it's mainly due to the fact that I think it's a lot of work. We're constantly there, and they're constantly doing a lot more work as the council asks. I do think the council needs to do more of their own research. When we ask for more information, we can do that ourselves. There are direct lines to staff that we are able to do, so we should probably do more of that. With just CCing the city manager instead of going directly to him. So there definitely should there I definitely think there needs to be a change in the relationship. But I think that's mainly due to the fact that there's always a changing council, and that really needs to be looked at.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the next question, we'll begin with Bria and then go to Dylan. The city is in the process of planning and designs for a potential new civic campus on Madison Avenue. What are your thoughts on the civic campus to replace the existing city hall? At this point in time, would you support its development? Again, we'll start with Bria.
So yes, absolutely. I would definitely support its development because it is definitely something that needs to be done. It's not fair to not only staff, but the community that we have so many like different resources expanding all throughout the city. And it's like if you want to go to Public Works, you have to go all the way down. You have to go all the way down one way, and then if it's like, oh, but I need to get to the court, you have to come all the way back to downtown. It's like it doesn't it doesn't aspire it's not inspiring for collaboration. And then there's the safety issue. Those buildings are very old. They have been here since Corvallis has been here, and they will not survive any emergencies, big or small. At this point, we've had several complaints about, the space being too small, and it's just like I've toured many of our facilities and they are not up to standard. There's the ADA access is not there. So that, that's hindering more community, more outreach, more want like that's definitely also putting the fissure in trust into local government with not being able to access even the simplest of buildings. Having our city council meetings and our city council work sessions in two different buildings when, it's called City Hall, which feels like a misnomer right now. So definitely having a new civic campus, I think, will not only boost people's trust, but it'll definitely boost that outreach and that community building that we need to really see in Corvallis.
Thank you, Bria. Now the same question to you, Dylan.
Well, fortunately, a lot of my answer, Brea Lewis and I are kind of on the same page in all regards on this, so I might end up just saying everything that she just said. So might as well not do that and maybe expand upon it. My primary mode of transportation is cycling. I haven't driven a car in 10 months now. Uh, and having city services strewn about is really inconvenient, yes, for staff and people that want to have access to city services. And yes, they are inaccessible and seismically unsound and overcrowded. And what else can be said on the matter? Yeah, having facilities that are adequate for staff and oh yeah, attending the civic campus task force meetings lately, um, making it so that it's close to the part of downtown next to our um, public transit center, as well as the major roads. Um, I think would be a boon for everybody. Um, and yeah, I support its development. It's just a matter of what's it going to look like, what color is it going to be.
Okay,
I don't know.
Still too early to talk about that.
Yeah, but thinking about it.
thank you, candidates. And back to you, Nina.
Okay, our last question for the evening. Are reported incidences of racial bias and hate crimes adequately documented and addressed in our city? Would you alter or augment the process that's in place? And Dylan, would you please address this first?
Oops. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think racial bias is adequately documented and addressed. Colored people, including myself, especially homeless people of color, God forbid, feel really scared around police. And the avenue to which you complain about the police is to the police themselves, which comes with a whole host of issues. I'd like to see something that's independent from the city manager or other city departments, be put in place where if you experience racial bias, hate crime, discrimination, um, you could tell someone independent of those who may or may not be have a vested interest in, I don't know, sweeping it under the rug for sake of appearances. Uh, that's all I have to say on the matter.
Thank you. Bria, how about you?
So I am aware that there is a history of something for it called the Bias Response Initiative. And what I would like to see is that updated and moved forward. I know that does mean that there's a lot of work in reopening talks with the county and the Council of Governments, COG. But that's something that I'm definitely willing to work on and learn more about and be able to actually see if we can do something with that to be able to have those responses more adequate recorded.
Great. Thank you both. And now, let's see, is it back to you, Jessica?
I think if you, well, thank you, candidates. We will now turn to your final statements. So please tell the voters listening why they should vote for you. And we'll take maybe a minute and a half for these responses. We'll start with Bria and then end with Dylan. Bria, your final remarks.
Again, thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure. Dylan, it's been great hearing your responses as well. I would like to say that because I am the incumbent, I would want to continue doing the work. 2 years is not enough. 2 years this first term has literally just been a great learning experience, but it has been a learning experience. And I want to come back and this next term and show people what I can really do. And so I would hope to continue being the Ward 2 City Councilor and actually really be able to get some work done.
Thank you. And your final remarks, Dylan?
First, I'd like to thank Ms. Jessica McDonald and Nina Petrovich for putting this whole forum together and for Brea for being in attendance. Let's see. Closing comments. I didn't prepare one. Well, I am the candidate of choice for a lot of local orgs doing the good work. Tenants United Corvallis, which seeks to um, ensure that tenants' protections are enshrined in our city's policy. Sunrise Corvallis, a local youth-led group fighting the climate crisis across the country. The Friends of the Corvallis Watershed, who are advocates for the Corvallis municipal watershed stewardship. That is really important to me. I had a really good talk with Dr. Betsy Herbert about that. I've also been endorsed by the Valley Neighbors for Environmental Quality and Safety, who are locals who are against the Coffin Butte landfill expansion, which, yes, I am aware that is a county issue, but at the same time, I believe the city can be doing more in ways of reducing the amounts of waste it produces. By Allison Hopgood, who is an executive director at the Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center. She commends me on the work that I've done as co-founder of the Really Really Free Market and as a cook for Corvallis Stop the Sweeps. And the Oregon State University Student Workers Committee, as I am all for organized labor. And yeah, thanks for bearing with my yapping. I know I could talk very fast, and as much as I try to enunciate, it could be hard to keep up with that, but thank you.
Thank you, candidates. And final remarks back to Nina.
Yes, thank you, Ward 2 candidates, Bria Lewis and Dylan DeHonor, for joining us in this lively discussion and sharing your interest in taking a seat on the Corvallis City Council. I also appreciate your personal experiences. To all watching, on behalf of the Lynn Benton branch of the NAACP and the League of Women Voters of Corvallis, thank you for listening in. Remember to talk to your friends, neighbors, and families about voting in this general election. Above all, we want everyone to vote.
Wonderful. Thank you, candidates. Good night.
Your time.